Here's the brief news from the world over this week. A bombshell coming out of the Vatican as a group of clergy and lay scholars from around the world have taken the rare step of presenting Pope Francis with a formal correction. It is the first of its kind in nearly 700 years, stemming from his apostolic exhortation, Amoris Laetitia, and his actions since. The group is accusing Pope Francis of propagating heresies on marriage, the moral life, and reception of the sacraments. Released publicly this week, the 25-page letter was personally delivered to the Holy Father on August 11th. The signatories accuse Pope Francis, through his words, deeds, and omissions, of upholding 7 heretical positions. Although not accusing the Pope of the sin of heresy, they say that his actions have caused heretical opinions to spread in the Catholic Church. The signatories respectfully insist that Francis condemn the heresies that he has directly or indirectly upheld, and that he teach the truth of the Catholic faith on the matters in question. There has been no official response from the Vatican. However, on Thursday, when asked about the formal correction, Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin said dialogue within the Church is important. People who disagree express their dissent. On these things, we have to reason, try to understand one another. More on this with one of the letter's signatories and the papal posse in our next segment. Back here in Washington, with the defeat of a health care overhaul in the rearview mirror, President Donald Trump and congressional Republicans have turned their attention to a far-reaching $5 trillion tax reform plan. The GOP is looking to both simplify and lower taxes. Some of the highlights outlined this week: individual tax brackets would be reduced from 7 to 3. The top rate would be lowered, and the standard deduction used by most would be nearly doubled. Many deductions would be eliminated, but not charitable and mortgage deductions. Corporations will see a huge cut, seeing their federal taxes reduced from the world's highest rate of nearly 40% down to 20%. Touting the sweeping tax plan in Indianapolis on Wednesday, the president said the benefits go beyond putting more money in the pockets of taxpayers.
We are going to bring back the jobs and wealth that have left our country, and most people thought left our country for good. We want tax reform that is pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-worker, pro-family, and yes, tax reform that is pro-American.
State taxes would no longer be deductible under the president's plan. As such, many residents in high-tax, high-property value states, such as California, New York, New Jersey, are likely to see a tax increase. A tax surcharge could also be imposed on the country's wealthiest individuals. And President Trump issued a new travel ban on Sunday. Citizens of 8 countries will face restrictions on entry to the U.S. The new rules replace the expiring ones, impacting citizens of Chad, Iran, Libya, North Korea, Somalia, Syria, Venezuela, and Yemen. The restrictions range from an indefinite ban on visas for citizens of countries like Syria to more targeted restrictions. After the policy announcement, Trump said via Twitter that making America safe is his #1 priority. A new round of lawsuits are expected as the U.S. Supreme Court has canceled its hearing of the now expired travel ban. Meanwhile, Pope Francis used his Wednesday general audience to launch a 2-year campaign encouraging the world's nations to open their borders and their arms. The Share the Journey campaign, as it is called, looks to raise awareness about the plight of migrants. The campaign encourages people to meet with migrants and listen to their stories rather than treat them as statistics or negative stereotypes. The Pope's effort is meant to address the mounting anti-immigrant sentiment in Europe, the U.S., and beyond. Francis, himself the son of Italian immigrants to Argentina, personally greeted migrants invited to sit at the front of the St. Peter Square kickoff. And the Vatican's former auditor general, charged with investigating the Church's finances, is speaking out this week about his sudden departure last June. Libero Milone told reporters that he he was forced to resign after finding irregularities and possible illegal activity within the Vatican's finances. Malone stopped short of revealing any specifics about alleged irregularity since he's bound by confidentiality agreements. The Vatican issued a statement saying Malone's claims are false and unjustified, going on to accuse him of spying on the private lives of superiors and staff. Malone says he was threatened with jail, his office was bugged, and computers hacked. Malone suspects that he was forced out by some old guard in the Vatican who wished to slow down Pope Francis's reforms. We'll take a closer look at this story in our next segment. And just when you never thought I'd give it to you, I have some good news from Washington. House Republican Whip Steve Scalise returned to Capitol Hill on Thursday, more than 3 months after being targeted in a near-fatal shooting. The 51-year-old Louisiana representative was received with hugs and standing ovations in a packed House chamber. Scalise and 4 others were injured when a gunman opened fire on a Republican baseball practice in Alexandria, Virginia. U.S. Capitol Police and other officers returned fire and killed the gunman, who had nursed grievances against President Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Scalise was struck in the hip, and the bullet tore into blood vessels, bones, and internal organs. He attributed his recovery to prayer and faith.
The first thing I did once I was down and I couldn't move anymore is I just started to pray. And I will tell you, it gave me an unbelievable sense of calm, knowing that at that point it was in God's hands. But I prayed for very specific things. And I will tell you, pretty much every one of those prayers was answered. And they were some pretty challenging prayers I was putting in God's hands. But he really did deliver for me and my family. And it just gives you that renewed faith in understanding that the power of prayer is something that you just cannot underestimate.
Delighted to see my congressman back in action. Keep the Scalise family in your prayers. Now, this week in New Orleans, I had the pleasure to attend the second annual Olive Mass. You've heard of red masses for those in the legal profession and the blue mass for law enforcement. Well, the Olive Mass remembers those in the food and hospitality industry and prays for their important work. The Mass was celebrated at St. Louis Cathedral in Jackson Square, with New Orleans Archbishop Gregory Aymond celebrating. The Olive Mass is the vision of EWTN's own Father Leo Patalinghug. Some of New Orleans' best chefs were in attendance, including John Besh, Susan Spicer, and others. And a reception followed at John Besh's Pigeon and Prince, and the food was amazing. Father Leo believes everyone can learn something from those in the hospitality industry.
We learn a lot from hospitality folks who are generous. They make us feel like we are part of their family and in their home. And that really is a Christian characteristic. Jesus is so generous. He gives to us his body, blood, soul, and divinity. He welcomes us to his table. And if we don't connect that theology with the practicality of the kitchen, then we're not paying attention to what St. Teresa of Avila said. If you want to find God, find him amidst the pots and the pans. And it takes a generous spirit to work in the heat of the kitchen.
Political consultant and adopted New Orleanian Mary Madeline was among the attendees.
You come hungry. You're hungry for the fellowship that coming together provides. The food is lagniappe, as we say here. So it's lovely to see so many food industry people support the Olive Mass. This is just a community of spirit.
Father Ken Smith was a chef who felt a calling to the priesthood while on the job.
My formation started when I entered the restaurant business, not when I entered Notre Dame. We walk with people from different walks of life with different problems, their joys and their upheavals and their sadness.
And then you feed them?
Yes, by all means. So I'm sort of cooking at a different table now.
The Table Foundation is working to build a facility in Baltimore that allows chefs to mentor ex-convicts and give them a new lease on life. That's what you call real nourishment. For more on the Table Foundation's work and the annual Olive Mass, visit thetablefoundation.org.